Good afternoon. I'd like to convene the Utilities and Commerce Committee. Sergeants, please call the absent members. We're waiting for Senate authors, so in the meantime, let's call the roll and establish quorum.
Rendon?
Here.
Rendon here. Patterson?
Here.
Patterson here. Eshajian? Bonilla? Burke? Here. Burke here. Daly?
Here.
Daly here. Eggman?
Here.
Eggman here. Garcia?
Here.
Garcia here. Hadley?
Here.
Hadley here. Hernandez? Obernolte?
Here.
Obernolte here. Quirk?
Here.
Quirk here. Santiago? Ting?
Here.
Ting here. Williams?
Here.
Williams here. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. We will start with Senator Hill's SB 1119 regarding the, SB 119 regarding the protection of subsurface installations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for this. I, like the majority of my constituents, had no interest in or understanding of underground utilities before the 2010 natural gas explosion in my district in San Bruno. Afterwards, I found in 2014. 5,000 gas pipeline dig-ins in 2014. About half were the result of an excavator's failure to call 811, but almost none received any kind of enforcement. No penalty. CSLB received 100 complaints. A closer look at dig-ins reveals that the lack of enforcement has hidden a host of other problems. Whole excavator groups subject to the law don't know of it. Or if they do, they don't realize it applies to them. After the April 17th natural gas explosion in Fresno that killed one and left another hospitalized for at least 8 weeks, the employer of the operator of front loader involved said the employee was redistributing soil with no excavation. The accident is still under investigation. So he was moving soil around but was not excavating, but killed one individual with that. The accident is still under investigation, but no call to 811 had been made. In other cases, people aren't following the law because it doesn't make sense. Current law requires a farmer to call 811 every time he or she tills, plants, or harvests. The requirement applies even in places where underground facilities are known not to exist. This is not to say that there is no danger, as high-pressure gas and petroleum pipes often traverse agricultural land. But the last thing we need is a law that is inappropriate 98% of the time, so that in the 2% where it is essential to protect health and safety, it is ignored. The other thing I learned in the years before I introduced this bill was the shocking level of mistrust in the field between utilities and excavators, and sometimes between different utilities. Excavators are thought by utilities to plow through gas and telecommunication lines because it's too much work to dig around them. Utilities are viewed by excavators as billing machines that can't be bothered to mark their lines on time, but will charge the excavator for every nick, even when it wasn't the excavator's fault. The worst part about these disputes is how they are resolved. In settlements with non-disclosure agreements where both sides walk away feeling they got the short end of the stick and learning nothing. To get at these problems, I solicited legislative proposals in 2014 and convened a series of stakeholder meetings. My email list has over 143 recipients. With the help and tremendous help from the stakeholder group, we crafted SB 119 to address these three problems: the no calls, the confusing and poorly tailored law, and the failure of communication necessary for safe operation in the field. The most visible feature of SB 119 is the stakeholder-led advisory committee with three functions. First, to coordinate education and outreach efforts among the industries. Two, the bill also allocates $350,000 from fines levied against gas and electric utilities to grant for this purpose. The second is to develop standards for safe excavation in areas where standards do not currently exist. And three, to investigate accidents and recommend penalties to the regulatory agencies that oversee violators. The CSLB if the violator is a contractor, the PUC if the violator was a gas or electric utility, fire marshal if the violator was a petroleum pipeline operator. One loose end that we are in the process of wrapping up is how exactly to deal with the uniqueness of agriculture. You'll hear a few speakers talk about that. Something else that has been brought to my attention is concern about the restriction of the homeowner exemption from calling 811 to hand tools only. There is a way to address this, and we can talk about that if you would like, and we're working on a solution. As we've had every other solution, every other problem, we've come to a solution working with the great stakeholders that have been involved. So now I'd like the stakeholders to speak and share their thoughts with you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. We'll do 3 support witnesses, and we'll do 3 opposition witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conity, representing the Underground Service Alert of Southern California, one of the 2 call centers where people call in before they dig. And we have been involved in this process ever since the beginning, actually since San Bruno occurred. And I can't thank Senator Hill and his able staff person, Tony, for all the work they've done on it. But you can imagine the difficulty in pulling all these stakeholders and competing interests together. And I will tell you, my clients have a few little issues with the bill. But we're 98% there. I've never had that position before, but our position, I guess, is 98% in support of the bill. I figured that out today. But anyway, this bill needs to go through. This is a tremendous work product that will end up saving lives in the state of California. One guy on a bulldozer in Fresno just moving a little dirt around, boom, 1 person dead. That's all it takes. So please vote yes and move this bill forward.
Mr. Chair, members, my name is Brett Barrow with the United Contractors, the National Electrical Contractors Association, the California Legislative Conference of the Plumbing, Heating, Piping Industry, and the Western Line Constructors. And we're here today in support after what has been a lengthy, very lengthy stakeholder process. Certainly we came to the table with many major concerns, those dealing with both safety as well as comprehensive reforms in the area of excavation legislation. We had called for legislation and reforms that included 3 things to make the program work properly, and that being that the contractor is required to call when it is required, that then the utility show up, they mark properly, and they mark on time. We believe that we have reached a place in this bill where those comprehensive reforms are in place. We appreciate the Senator's efforts and the staff's efforts throughout this process. We are here in support, and we urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Todd Blumstein for the Southern California Contractors Association. I, too, would like to thank Senator Hill and all his hard work. He spent many hours, him and his staff, many hours on drafting this legislation. We come before you with serious concerns on the program itself. This is a program designed to protect worker safety. It's a very easy program to understand. If you're a contractor or planning to dig into the ground, you you mark where you're going to dig. 2 days later, within 2 days, utilities come out and mark where the infrastructure is, and then the contractor can safely excavate. We had one incident in Southern California where a contractor was excavating the asphalt, just removing the top of the asphalt. They struck a riser, a gas riser that wasn't supposed to be there. That riser caught fire, and the machine caught fire. Thankfully, the operator jumped off. No one was injured, but this is an instance where the process broke down, that riser shouldn't have been in the asphalt. We think with Senator Hill's bill, there'll be a lot more there'll be better quality in the marking of the infrastructure. We're also very, very supportive of the standards that the senator is proposing. The regulations are extremely vague for an excavator on how and what to do when excavating around this infrastructure. We think with the advisory committee, it would come up with a good set of best practices for the industry to follow. That's one of several reasons why SCCA is in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, guys, very much. That's great.
Thank you. Do we have witnesses in opposition?
Thank you very much.
We're going to do the same thing here. We'll do 3 main witnesses opposed, and then everyone else can state their opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jack Walko with the Gualco Group on behalf of the California Association of Wine Grape Growers. Our position has been opposed, and we've had a number of conversations, in-depth ones, with the senator's staff. And our initial concerns were raised relative to the 16-inch agricultural exemption, which from a wine grape grower's perspective is just going to be impractical when dealing with end posts and stakes and other kinds of cultural practices necessary to properly manage a crop and get it in the field. But we've since had conversations about modifying the notice requirements, which I think may get to the point of addressing some of those concerns, and we're hopeful that language can be worked out. And perhaps in your close, Senator, you can clarify whether this bill is intended to apply to lands that have no subsurface installations on them. That may address some of those timeliness issues. I have with me Brad Gehring, who is a wine grape grower from Clements, and he's also chair of the COG Government Affairs Committee. So, Brad, you want to make a couple comments?
Great.
He's also here to answer questions.
Before you do so, I apologize. I forgot to allow the additional supporters to add on with Me Too's. We'll just do all the add-ons, Me Too's, and Me Nots after both testimonies. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In our grape growing industry, we're digging a hole almost every day of a non-winter month. And we also install vineyards throughout Northern California. Just installing a vineyard alone requires installing end posts to hold the trellis system, installing a grape stake at each vine site that's 2 feet in depth is an industry standard. We have tractor drivers that hit grapevines. We need to pull grapevines out and put new stakes in. Our planting depth on grapevines exceeds 16 inches. And so through a variety of other reasons, including irrigation, but not limited to that, we're digging a hole every day. And so we would find it rather cumbersome. We appreciate the intent of the bill, but we would find it rather cumbersome from a wine grape growing industry perspective on having to call each time we needed to do something 16 inches in depth. And we're hopeful we can work with the author to make those amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Doug Subers on behalf of the Western States Petroleum Association. We have an opposed unless amended position, and we'd like to thank Senator Hill and his staff for working with us and this entire kind of stakeholder group through this process. Our concern really relates to Section 12 of the bill. Section 12 of the bill is related to this agricultural exemption. What it would do, it would require the owner of a high-priority subsurface installation to notify an agricultural excavator if there is if we feel that one of our lines or subsurface installations are at a depth that could be in conflict with the exemption. Our concern is primarily that we don't know what's going on top of the exemption along the entire easement the entire time. So we feel like there is a path forward. We've been working with the senator and his staff. We think there's a way to address this issue, but we'd like to, just raise this issue here and continue to work with him as we go forward. And lastly, we think there could be some done to clarify how liability will work within the context of this exemption. So we'll continue to work with the senator and would like to thank him for his efforts to improve pipeline safety and reform this section of law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now let's do the additional support and additional oppositional witnesses, as well as those who are tweeners, and then we'll go to question and answers from the committee. So those who come up to the microphone now, please identify yourself, your affiliation, and also your position on the bill.
Hi, Jamie Kahn. I'm here on behalf of the Associated General Contractors, and we are here in support of the bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Matt Moretti with AT&T. We are supportive amended, but we believe we have amendments to solve our issues.
Thank you.
Matt Klopfenstein with the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. We are also support if amended and look forward to working with the author's office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Behrens on behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. We have an opposed unless amended position, but like so many of the others, we thank the Senator and staff for the outstanding work they've done. We believe the amendments have addressed all but one of our concerns, and with minor clarification, we may remove that opposition to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Mills for the California Farm Bureau Federation. We had an opposed unless amended position, and we've been working with the author and his staff for several months in trying to resolve the issues. And we recognize that there's still a lot of discussion about a couple of those provisions, so we're continuing to work with the office. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail Dillahant with Western Growers, and I concur with Ms. Mills on our work with the author's office. We appreciate what we've done so far, and we are a neutral position at this point, and we will continue to work with you on all those other little tweakers.
Good afternoon, Tricia Geringer with Agricultural Council of California, also neutral, continue to work with the author and his staff. We appreciate their time and energy on this issue.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Israel Salas with Southern California Gas Company and San Diego Gas and Electric. We continue to maintain our supportive amended position. There are at least 4 issues that we want to continue to work with the author and his staff on, and we're pretty hopeful that we can get those issues addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's everyone who support, opposed, and tweeners. Great. Do we have questions from committee members? Ms. Eggman first, and then Mr. Quirk.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator. So as not Mr. Gehring's representative, but very close to him, and having been out to the place, and the wine industry is a major economy in my district. Can you please speak to some of the concerns that were raised about stakes and such?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. The main issue is the 16-inch depth and the requirement to call, and especially the requirement if they know it's established that there are no pipes, there's nothing on their land. And that was one of the amendments that we're talking about, that we're going to take that will clarify that, so that if you have and generally with agriculture, you have a relationship with whatever that utility is. And the excavator knows the utility, and that relationship identifies where it is. And if it's a permanent installation, it's marked. They already have identifying markers above. So the issues that they had and Mr. Gualco had, we've resolved in the amendments that we're going to take. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Mr. Quirk, I'm sorry.
Mr. Quirk.
Hi. Well, this is an extremely important bill, and while there are amendments to be taken, I am quite comfortable in moving the bill and hoping that people will support this, given the great track record you have working with all the stakeholders.
Thank you.
So I move the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obernolte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hill, I want to start by thanking you for the very considerate and inclusive way that you've approached this bill. It really shows with all of the people, stakeholders coming with concerns, the fact that you've addressed them is very commendable. I'd like to take you up on your offer to talk a little bit more about the homeowner's exemption for power tools, because I'd very much like to support the bill, and that's a chief concern that I have.
And that's a very major concern that we have, because as you know, right now there is an exemption for homeowners, but the utilities are only required, federal law only requires that gas line to be 12 inches below the surface. And with erosion, and that's what occurred in Fresno not long ago, with it was almost at the surface. So we have to find a way where hand tools can be used, or that. But the key issue with that is that there shouldn't be any enforcement. I mean, what the utilities have said is, Semper said, I think it was, that a homeowner's only going to dig in and hit a pipe once, and they won't do it a second time. So what we have to make sure is that we don't need to punish them if they do that. If they call, education is the key, and that's really going to be the focus, is to try and make it work. But I'd love to work with you on that and see if we can come to some resolution, because I think we're almost there. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
We'll definitely do that.
Thank you, Mr. Obernolte. Any other questions? Check to close, Senator? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Patterson. I apologize.
I just wanted to echo the agricultural concern and echo the homeowner concern that was raised here. But I also want to commend you for the way in which you work with stakeholders. It is reassuring to many of us. I was going to be kind of a quiet no because of the concerns. Usually I'm more comfortable with the amendments actually in front of me and being able to move it along. But, Senator, I trust you. And when you say you're going to work with these stakeholders, I believe you. And so I'm going to support the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patterson. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Other questions, comments? Check to close.
I would just briefly, and I would just want to thank everyone and the stakeholders and Tony Marino of my staff. It has been an incredible effort on his part and on their part. It was a year ago, March, that we had a meeting that we brought everyone together to have a conversation, and there were 50 or 60 people, 55 or 65 people in the room, in the Rules Committee in the Assembly, in the committee room. It was packed. And the point I made at that meeting, because I've been watching this for 4 or 5 years now as I got interested in it, is that I said someone's going to die sooner rather than later again because of this. Someone's going to die. And it took almost an exact year for that to happen in Fresno. Because when you get 5,000 dig-ins a year from one utility, and PG&E has the same, that invariably that break in that air and that gas mixture is going to be at that 5 to 15%, and you're going to have that explosion and take someone's life. So everyone, I believe we all recognize that, and no one wants someone else to lose their life over this. And that's why everyone has been so supportive and helpful in coming to the solution. And we're almost there, and we're going to make it to the goal line and bring something home. So thank you, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote, members.
Thank you, Senator. I too want to thank you for your commendable stakeholder process. It's been quite impressive. I've done a little bit of work this year on on underground vault safety issues, hugely important safety and public safety issue. So, again, this is a life-saving work that we're engaging in. We have a motion from Mr. Quirk and a second from Ms. Burke. Please take the roll.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to Judiciary Committee. Rendon?
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Patterson?
Aye.
Patterson, aye. Ashajian? Bonilla? Bonilla, aye. Burke?
Aye.
Burke, aye. Eggman?
Aye.
Eggman, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Hernandez? Obernolte?
Aye.
Obernolte, aye. Quirk?
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Santiago?
Aye.
Santiago, aye. Ting? Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. 11-0.
That bill is out.
Thank you very much, members. Really
Thank you.
appreciate the conversation, discussion. Thank you.
Next up is SB 350.